Hello, you guys. So, I watched the series Pose, and I've got some thoughts. And yes, I know my hair is crazy. I just washed it. And no, this is not a perm. This is my natural curl. But yes, it is dyed. And I don't know what to do with it right now. It's driving me crazy. Uh, maybe I should just hold it. Okay. So I have some thoughts. If you guys don't know what Pose is, it is a series that to me kind of feels like was in reinterpretation of the documentary Paris is Burning. If you haven't seen that documentary, you absolutely should, especially if you do belong to the LGBT plus community. I think it's an important documentary on our history, our shared history, which that documentary basically also talks about the I don't know, should I call it the Vogue scene in like the 1970s and 1980s in like Harlem and the Bronx. And yeah, so the series basically has taken that time period and that scene and has created storylines around it that pretty much exclusively focus on people of color and also the trans community and obviously the gay community. So if you are interested in hearing my thoughts on this series, stick around. If you're not, obviously, goodbye. Nice knowing you. For those of you guys who potentially might see this video of mine as the first video you've ever seen of mine, then yeah, like I am a gay man that grew up in a very small town in southern Germany, probably around 800 people when I was living there growing up. And so I do have, you know, born in the 80s and, a child in the 90s and having to also deal with, I would say, obviously, none of the really horrific issues that the people in that series have to deal with, but more so, my issues would probably be the fact that there was just nobody around. I just grew up in this like idea that I am the only person who thinks and feels this way, which is its own struggle, of course, in a completely different way. So I'm not trying to, in any way, shape, or form, that might say my struggle is that, but just to say that I'm not somebody who's just coming out of nowhere and going to talk about this show and never having experienced anything in terms of homophobia or, feeling scared and lonely and that you don't have anybody you can talk to or something like that. All right. So, first, I want to say that I actually started watching the show, full disclosure, thinking that I would absolutely hate it. You guys know that I've been doing a lot of videos lately where I talk about the non-ending barragement. Is that a word in English? Like just constantly bombardment from the left, and they're ever increasing. We have to be so open-minded, and we have to be so inclusive, and we have to consider everything. And if you don't accept everything that comes from the left, then you're bigoted. I'm sorry, I keep playing with my hair, but I don't want to tie it up when I just washed it. And so I actually this is I actually watched it and I thought I was gonna hate it. And it actually turns out that I have really enjoyed it for the vast majority. I would say there's 70%, 80% of me has really enjoyed the show, and 20 to 30% has certain things that I feel like are a little bit of an issue for me, and those I'm also going to address. But before I get clocked, because I know people will want to clock me for it, because heaven forbid a gay man, a person of the community, has any kind of opposing opinions to what is always being broadcast by the left and social media and the media, uh, I will have to say that there's a lot of things in this series that I thought were done really well. So one of the things I've talked about on my channel a lot is that we keep seeing this discussion being brought up about how there isn't enough representation on TV. There needs to be more black people on TV and more Latino people on TV and more gay people and more trans people, all this kind of stuff. And how I, in the past, have said that I don't like how that is being handled in a lot of shows. One of my last videos, I just talked about He-Man, where it was like He-Man was already a pre-established show, and they decided they had to kill off the main white heteronormative character and give the show to the woman and the black woman, and to kind of make it more representative. And I don't appreciate that, and I don't like that, and I don't think that adds to our cause. But here now, this show, it is, I think, except for like maybe one actor or two actors on the show, it is all people of color. It is all people who somewhere, I think, identify on the LGBT spectrum. And it's fine. It's great. There's no issue for me with that whatsoever, because it makes sense with the show. Not every show has to have white people, and not every show has to have straight people, and not every show has to have men or whatever, is the big, mean, evil, heterosexual white male nowadays to be enjoyable. I don't think that way at all. My issue was always if it feels like it's forced. But here it's not, because this is accurate to what was going on in New York City during the 70s and 80s. This was a scene that was predominantly by the Black and Latino community, the queer community, I don't like that word, the gay community, the LGBT community. So it makes sense to make a series where that is the people who are acting in the show. Good job. Hey, I loved it. I love watching the show. I love seeing the perspectives of, these people. No issue there at all. I think that is done really, really well, and I really, really enjoyed it. I also think something the show does really well is that it shows that people are multifaceted, that people can be flawed, people can change, they can sometimes be this way and then other times be that way. And I think that is something that show is really doing well and really capturing that in its characters. And I think that's also really interesting. I also really like that the show, it does have like maybe 2 or 3 main characters, but overall it kind of shifts and it shows the different characters. It's not like a lot of other shows where it's like, here's the 2 main characters and everything is going to be about them and everybody else is just on the sidelines. I feel like they did a really good job of kind of integrating all these different people's stories, so it's not so we only hear about this one person. You kind of get to the point where you start caring about all of the different characters on the show and you see all of their individuality and all of their struggles. And I think that was done really, really well as well. Then one of the storylines was something about like how we in the community build our own families. How we build our own families, and also our relationship to our, I don't know what the correct term is that people use now. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The correct term being like, your birth family. I don't know what the correct term is that people are using. So the thing I liked about how they handled it in the show is because one of the things I've been saying for a very long time is that I think in the LGBT plus community, something I've always been a little bit unhappy about the way it's being framed is how it's always like parents and cousins and family and friends, they all have to accept us for the way we are. They all have to accept us for being gay or trans or, effeminate or butch or whatever the case happens to be, which I obviously do agree with. I think that if somebody claims to love you, they should do that, regardless if you're gay or whatever. At the same time, what I liked in the show is something that I've been preaching for a lot of years, and that is that you also have to consider it the other way around. The same way your mother has the responsibility to love you as her gay son or her lesbian daughter or her trans son or daughter or whatever have you. I always find in the gay community there is too much. You have to accept me. You have to accept me. Everybody has to accept me. Everybody has to accept the way I am. But we don't turn around and say, okay, let me sit down with you and also try to understand the fact that maybe you grew up in a really religious household and you were raised to believe that my lifestyle is bad and shameful and wrong. And I also have to show you some empathy and you some compassion because you are also struggling. I'm sorry, but I have the best relationship I've had with my mother ever. And I really take pride in the fact that I think a lot of that came from me because I also started off as this angry gay man who was just like, you're not accepting me for the way I am. That makes you a bad mother and that makes you a horrible person. And I kind of matured, in my opinion, to where I kind of got like, I also sat down and spoke with her, and I was like, I want to get to know you as who you are, and who you are as a person, and what values you have, and showing her that respect that I was willing to try to understand her and her background and where she comes from actually made her more open to understanding me and my lifestyle and my worth. And we have a very good relationship now. And I just feel like that's something that show also handled really well, where one of the main characters, Blanca, kind of was confronted with her mother's death, and she was saying how as much as she wanted her mother to accept her, she felt that she could have done more to understand her mother's feelings and her mother's perspective, and that might have helped build their relationship. And I thought that was handled really well because I think that is something that's generally not handled well in gay books and series. Um, so I think that was done really well. I also have to say I liked the continuing storyline about how the HIV epidemic was handled. Or maybe I should say now I'm kind of going into the things where I have a little bit mixed feelings on, and then at the very end I'll do the things I just full on didn't like. For the most part, I like the way HIV was handled because I think the characters were. I like the fact that the characters didn't see it as just a death sentence and this self-pitying. And I talked with one of my subscribers who's now a friend of mine about this as well, and he agreed. And actually, he kind of brought it up, and I was like, I agree with you. That's also what I was thinking. And that it's kind of a nice way perspective to see these people say, okay, so I have this virus, and I'm still going to continue living. I'm still going to continue thriving. I think that's a really new perspective that we have. I also really like the fact that they explicitly said in the show, I will take responsibility with the fact that I have the virus, and I will always be honest about it, and I will point it out to people I will potentially date, which I think is a really, really important step. And I think something we constantly, and I think something that definitely has become more acceptable in the gay community, and a lot more gay people are doing it, where they do put their status openly. And I think that is a very courageous and the proper way to handle something like that, and that you shouldn't carry shame with it, you know. So I think that part I really liked about the way the HIV issue was being brought. The part that I'm a little bit, I'm not sure how I feel about it is I think it's maybe I think just like if I had watched this show like 5 years ago, this is not something that would have even popped in my mind. But with us being currently in the corona pandemic, the general thinking these days in the corona pandemic is this: if you don't follow the rules of the government, if you dare to say that you don't want to get vaccinated because you're questioning it, if you are against the lockdowns or the shutdowns or wearing the mask or something, you are a bad person. You're a bad person because you could potentially get somebody sick, and that makes you evil. But in the show, a lot of the blame is put on the ignorance of the people who aren't sick. It's kind of the reverse, where it's like, it's okay to have HIV, and they need to accept us as being sick people, and they need to not make us feel bad about being sick and potentially spreading the virus. I mean, actually, in California, I think it just became, they just took it off the books, where it's actually not considered a crime anymore to purposely not tell somebody you sleep with that you have HIV and potentially getting them sick. It's no longer a crime. It used to be a crime. I think it might have been like, um, what was it? Not murder. What is the other word they use for murder? There's another word for it, but I forget what it. But like, it used to be a criminal offense to, if you knew that you had HIV, to keep it from the person that you're with and then potentially getting them sick. And we've already kind of even taken that back. And the attitude in the show is a little bit like, it's the populace at large who is wrong, and the people who have HIV, somehow they should have gotten more rights, they should have been treated better, all kinds of stuff. And I just feel like to now, with the coronavirus and the people who are so supportive of blaming people who don't want to follow the rules, to me, in my head, somehow I just feel like it's hypocritical. I think it's just a little bit like, why should we need to be more relaxed and chill about the idea that people were afraid of potentially catching HIV and not wanting anything to do with people who have HIV and potentially would spread HIV? That's so unfair and wrong, but it is okay to completely villainize people who, aren't doing the right steps to keep Corona from passing. And I don't know. To me, I'm not sure how I feel about that part of what's going on. But like I said, 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't even have thought about it at all. Okay, so now we're gonna go into like the things I really am struggling with the show, and the things I'm not really liking. And I wouldn't even say that it's necessarily the show so much as that this is the part that I'm not appreciating from the media anymore. And yeah, something that I'm not really appreciating, and why I've really stopped watching a lot of movies and doing a lot of social media, and because I'm just getting really tired of the over the top far leftist narrative of what of how there is this oppression Olympics. I'm really tired of the oppression Olympics. I'm really tired of this, these people are privileged and so they don't know anything about suffering or pain, and these people, they're so far down at the bottom, so you know, they kind of just have this moral high ground over everybody. Because I think if you're either going to say that everybody that belongs to a community is monolithic and they all exactly think and feel the same and they all exactly feel and have the same experiences, or they don't. And guess what? They don't. I am not monolithic with the gay community. On the contrary, my channel is very unpopular because of the fact that I generally have very opposing views in a lot of circumstances to what is the general gay narrative. So one of the things they do in that series is they're constantly trying, kind of like pitying, is that a word? Gay people against trans women. It's about trans women, right? But maybe it also be about trans men. And how trans women are even more oppressed than gay men, and how gay men are also a lot of times not correct to trans women. So there was one episode where the main character and one of the side characters, they both went to a gay bar to celebrate something. I forget what it was. And they were really, really offended because the gay men didn't want them at the gay bar, and they were saying how that was transphobic and all this kind of stuff. And it really turned into this whole episode about, especially because it was a white male gay bar, and they were trans women of color, so it was like doubly racist. And I have to say, I personally took a little bit of offense to it because it was again it was way too forced for me, and I just overall didn't understand the messaging. Because why in the first place would two trans women want to go to this gay bar? Like, it was just very forced into the narrative. That just didn't make any sense to me at all. It's like, so you already knew that this was a gay white male bar, and for reasons, these two colored trans women were like, this is the bar where we want to celebrate our whatever I forget what they were celebrating. I'm like, first of all, the narrative that we have been fed is that being trans is not the same as being gay, and that the struggle isn't being the same, and what they're trying to achieve is not the same. So they want to be seen as the sex of their choice. So to trans women going to a gay bar already doesn't make sense. Why would they want to go there? Why would they want to do that? Why, like, that's not your audience. That's not the dating audience that you say that you want. Uh True, I guess you could want to go to any bar you would want to go, and I definitely, of course, agree that everybody should be allowed to go whatever bar they want to go to. But that, like, just the fact that they created that scenario already felt really forced to me. And I didn't like it. I don't know. I really don't know how to say what I'm trying to say, because but it just seemed to me like they were just somehow trying to once again show how much more difficult their struggle is. And this is something I generally, just like I said, I don't agree with the Oppression Olympics, and I don't think it is fair to just kind of create this little chart and be like, okay, the more boxes you can check, the more oppressed you are. Done. I think we've simplified this idea way too much. There are gay black women who are incredibly successful and that potentially could have not experienced half of the oppression and the struggles that maybe some straight white male has. And that's just the world. I mean, like, it is more nuanced. You can't just check a box and be like, okay, you've got 75 oppression points, which means that gives you 45 minutes of talking time on this show. And I just found that was a little bit tacky. And then, like, she kept going back to the bar and was like, I have the right to be served in this bar. And I'm like, is this, because I think it kind of also backstabs the gay community, because we also in the 70s and 80s were still trying to find our own ground. And I guess I don't really see anything wrong with gay men wanting to have a space of their own, per se. Like, I generally think everybody should just go wherever the hell they want anyway. But in that time, I thought, I don't know. I guess I just don't find it offensive towards trans people if gay people were saying, this is not our struggle, this is not what we are fighting for or wanting, or this is, so please let us have our own space. The same way that trans people in that time had their own space, and it's okay for them to have had their own space. So I don't know. I really didn't like that storyline at all, and I thought I didn't like how they were trying to really force the Oppression Olympics in that way. And they do that throughout the series. We have to constantly be reminded that being trans is the most difficult thing that has ever existed and will ever exist. And that, whatever, which leads me into the second point that I really didn't enjoy. And because the series is set up to kind of say, the most difficult thing that could ever potentially happen to somebody is being I think it's supposed to be like both trans and a trans person of color. And because of that, the series forgives a lot of behavior that I'm sorry that I just personally don't think should be forgiven. And it's unterschwellig. What is the word in English? Subliminally. That's a word, right? Yeah. I think it's subliminally we are being given this narrative that if you are a trans person of color, it is okay for you to steal, to lie, to cheat, to hurt people, and it should be forgiven and it should be accepted because I'm a trans person of color and because of my chart showing that I'm 75% the most like having the most problems in the world. I should be forgiven for everything. And I'm sorry, that's something, no, that's not gonna fly with me. I don't care if you're black, I don't care if you're white, gay, straight, trans, you know, bi, whatever it is you want to identify. If you want to identify as one of those tree people that like that one actress, I don't care. That does not justify you and does not give you the excuse to be a horrible person, to steal when it's convenient to you, to cheat when it's convenient to you. I think I again was talking to that subscriber slash friend of mine, and he made the point. I think the series was trying to show how difficult survival was if that was where you came from. And I was like, fair enough. Totally, fair enough. But I think then the show should have had the moral obligation to say, or to have them add. I mean, like, there was so many parts in the show where it's like they basically stare in the camera and say, racism is wrong, and if you're a straight white male, you deserve hell. I mean, like, it was like so many things were just so on the nose. Is that a saying? So on the chin? So on the nose. Politically, I feel like they could have added something into the show where one of the trans women said something along the lines of, yes, I cheat, yes, I steal, I do it to survive, but I know it's wrong. I feel bad for doing it. I don't think it is acceptable. And if my life ever gets to a point where I can survive without it, I will pay back my debts to society. And I just feel like that makes a very different message than what is actually happening in that show, where you see them sitting around the table and one of the persons says something like, oh, shouldn't this money we stole from welfare go to like children? And they're like, nuh-uh, sister, you need to change your way of thinking. We deserve this because we've had a hard life. Screw the children, and I'm like, really? I'm like, I don't know. I can't fly with that. I can't forgive bad behavior because you've had a hard life. I can't. Sorry. That will never fly with me. That will never be an excuse for me. No. You have choices in life, and that's just the way it is. And you're not going to be excused bad behavior or illegal behavior because your life was hard. At least not in my book. And I think it's a horrible message, and especially a horrible subliminal message to pass on to people. Yeah. So, and the last issue that I have with the show, I think, is now going into a more broader topic, for those of you guys who are still here and interested, which is that the show has made me kind of, or also has kind of made me reevaluate my feelings on, oh, God, I hate saying this. I'm sorry, I can't think of a better way of saying this. The trans issue. The first time I ever really even was made cognizant of the fact that there, that, I don't want to say, like I spent a good, when I first moved to the US, not when I first moved to the US, but eventually I was living in San Francisco. I was living in the Lower Haight. I worked in the Castro. I have seen it all the fetishes, all the different lifestyles, trans, bi, gay, people of color, people in the leather, people, and I've seen it all. I mean, the gay pride parade went right past where I worked. I worked at Tower Records in the Castro. I've seen it all. Trust me. So the idea of trans people was not something that was is not new to me, but in the last 5 years, it's become very political. And my stance was just because I just never cared and was never a political issue for a very long time. My stance was basically like, I don't care. If you're a born male and you want to become a female and you do the work, I respect you as a female. I will address you as a female. Same way the other way around. I've already mentioned on my channel, I've already gone out on dates with trans men. It was not, it was actually one of the trans men I went out with. It was actually one of the best dates I ever went on with because he was such a nice guy and he was a real gentleman and pulled like the chair out for me, all this kind of stuff. It was never an issue to me until it became like political. And once it became political, and especially the way the far left works these days, I'm I'm feeling like I have to reevaluate how I feel about the trans issue because I really don't like the way the politics around the trans issue. I'm sorry I'm saying it that way. I feel like that's not a nice way to say it, so I apologize if I offend somebody who is trans by saying it this way because I don't think it is an issue. Uh, but I feel like the way the politics from the far left or the left is going with this has really made me kind of go, maybe I'm needing to reevaluate how I feel about it. And this show kind of again added to that because one of the things that is in this show, because a lot of the main characters are trans women and their struggles, which I think there are many, many, many. I don't know how I feel about again the idea from the show being if because you are oppressed, you should now, and this is something that we're now seeing within the last 5 years, you should now be given more liberties than the average person. You know, so what am I trying to say? Like in the show, again, it's kind of addressed about, you know, does the person I sleep with, do they have the right to know that I'm trans? And do they have to see me as a woman and not as a trans woman? And are they bigoted if they don't see me as a woman? You know, and this is now because it's become political. There's things that I don't know if I find myself agreeing with the way the far left is taking it. Like I already said, I'm sorry, trans women in sports, no, flat out, no, no. I my friend just like told me about how in Mexico a woman was denied playing in the national sports team because she naturally, I think, had like 3% testosterone in her system, and it was seen as too high and seen as an unfair advantage. So she was not allowed to play in the national team. But trans women only have to go down as low as 10% testosterone and still are allowed to compete in women's sports. No, no, no. I'm sorry. On this issue, a hard no. No. And I'm sorry that if you are a trans woman and you want to pursue sports, that you maybe now not be able to follow this dream. But here, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be really hard and just say, tough, tough. Not everybody gets to live out their dream. That's part of life. And then you kind of have to go, well, now I need to figure out what my other dream is. I'm also kind of going along with it as it comes. You know, there's been hurdles and rocks put into my road as well. And then I can't just say, well, no, everybody has to adapt to what I want. I have to say, okay, then that's not a dream that I'll never be a professional athlete. I mean, to be fair, that's not something I want. But I would love to have been an author. I can't. I just don't have the talent. I have to accept that. I could never be a singer. I don't have the talent. I have to accept that. I don't get to shame everybody around me because, oh, that's my dream. So you have to let me sing even if it sounds terrible. No, no. I'm sorry. Then that to me is a hard no. That is one issue where I'm like, sorry, can't. Sorry, I wrote myself some notes. So that is something where I'm really kind of having to second guess how I feel about trans, what's going on politically. And one of the other issues is now the discussion that even kind of came in that show is, do trans women have to say to the men that they sleep with that they're trans? And a lot of the counter arguments is no, they don't have to, because potentially they might be unsafe if they do, or that man has to accept them as a woman. And so if the man doesn't accept them as a woman and doesn't sleep with them, even though they potentially might still have male genitalia, then they're the bigoted person and they're the wrong person. They don't have to say anything because they are real women. And here I want to kind of give a counterexample, which I think I came up with myself, and I actually think is very legit, and I've yet to find somebody who can counter argue it. If you slept with somebody, regardless, male, female, whatever, and afterwards they told you, oh, by the way, I'm married and I have 2 children. In our society, you would have the right to be angry, to be hurt, to feel cheated. If you slept with somebody and afterwards they told you, oh, by the way, I'm underage, in our society, you would have the right to feel angry and to feel hurt and to feel cheated. If you slept with somebody and heaven forbid they have some kind of STD and afterwards they're like, by the way, I had chlamydia or something like that, or herpes or crabs, you, by our society standards, have the right to feel hurt and to feel cheated. Because when you are sleeping with somebody, you have the right to want full disclosure. Especially as gay men, we have even been conditioned when we sleep with somebody to actually ask them, do you have HIV? Do you practice safe sex? We are entitled to this information so that we can make a fair decision on whether or not we want to be intimate with this person. But now, according to the far left and crazy rules, when it comes to trans people, you don't have the right to be upset. Straight men don't have the right to be upset if they sleep with somebody who they think is a woman, and then they go, oh, by the way, I'm trans, and they should just be like, oh well, that's fair. No. No, you don't have that right. You have to give people full disclosure so that they can make a fair assessment about if they want to be intimate with you. I don't understand how there's all these other things that's allowed to be offended if somebody lies to you, but on this all of a sudden, no, you're not. How dare you be offended by it? I find that a very strange and warped way of thinking of this issue. I also feel that I kind of think we now live in this society where everybody is always looking to put the blame on the other person. If that man doesn't see you as a real woman, then they're the asshole. They're the bigoted person. They're the evil person. And nothing is on you. And I'm like, well, maybe you should just not have indiscriminate sex. You guys already know how I feel about that anyway. I believe in monogamy. I don't think that it's healthy for us as people to have indiscriminate sex. I know it happens. I've obviously already had, one night stands as well. I'm not some angel or anything. But if your worry is this man might potentially hurt me or kill me, well then maybe you shouldn't just be hooking up with somebody and just be like, and just not even have a conversation with them. Then maybe you need to take on the responsibility to say, okay, I need to go on a couple of dates with this person. I need to then talk with them. I need to see if this is somebody who is trustworthy. And I also don't think it is wrong to tell them beforehand that you are trans, maybe even in a public place. So if they get offended or worried, you don't have to worry about them freaking out on you. Wouldn't that be the smarter and fairer way, not only for the person you're about to sleep with, but for yourself to make sure those kind of situations don't occur? Like, I just don't understand as a society how we've all of a sudden become like, okay, you're a trans woman with maybe still male genitalia. You find a man, he thinks you're a woman, you sleep with him, and then he's the bad guy because he's upset when he finds out that you have a dick. No, no, sorry, hard no on that too. Um, Another thing that's kind of become more political, where I'm also now feeling that I have to kind of rethink my thinking on this is the more I think about it, the more I feel like, especially with this series kind of making it seem like gay men are backstabbing the trans community, I actually have to say that one of the things that I see a lot in interviews with trans women, and I've seen many, and I've known trans women, is that they always insist on wanting real men. And, heterosexual men are attracted to trans women, which personally I don't believe. I don't think gay men are attracted to trans women, but I also don't believe heterosexual people are attracted like that. I don't know where they are on the spectrum. Maybe they're bi or there's something else, but they're definitely not heterosexual either. If they like a dick, they're not heterosexual. Regardless, that's not the point. The point is this insistence by trans women that they want a real man, and they want a masculine man, and they want a straight man. To me now again is starting to sound a little bit like homophobia. Like gay men aren't real men. You know, liking yeah, I don't even know how to say it any other way. It's kind of like gay men aren't real men, which I think this and that kind of backstabbing to what my community has been fighting for, to say that gay men are also real men, uh, just because we like other men and maybe we like fashion and hairstyles and I don't know, whatever it is, uh, that doesn't make us less men. So I kind of feel like that is a little bit of a backstabbing part of that is being pushed by the narrative of the trans community, um, which I think is something that isn't being addressed. And the final thing is, by no means all trans men and women are this way. By no means, and I'm very well aware of it. But at least the ones that have the most voice, the ones that are most seen and known in in the world, in social media or wherever. And this is somebody like, even like I include Blair White into this, uh, even though I don't agree with her on a lot. But there's some things where I do agree with her on. And one of the things that you do see a lot, especially more so with trans women, is they are very hyper feminine and they are very hypersexual. Even like Blair White and a lot of the other ones, it's always like boobs out, mini skirts, super long nails. Always the hair is like, kind of like me right now. um, you know, this just super, super, and also a little bit vulgar. I'm sorry to have to say it this way, in terms of the hyper femininity, and then that also makes me go, so you wanted to transition from male to female, and this is the way you've decided to present yourself, which then makes me go, is that your interpretation of what it means to be a woman? Because that to me is also a little bit offensive. That is not what a woman is. That is not what a woman should have to be. That is not what, your this hypersexual and this hyper femininity is something that also women in their struggles have been fighting against for a very, very long time. To be like, hey man, my eyes are up here, right? Like, don't sexualize me, don't make me just a sexual object, don't just fetishize my body. And that is something that has been part of the women's movements and the women's rights for such a long time, that I'm sorry, when I see people like Blair White, even though I agree with a lot of her opinions and I have a lot of respect for her in a lot of ways, and a lot of the other trans YouTubers and social media people, they are just so hyper sexualized and so hyper feminine. And that again, like I already said it, to me again, I think it's a little bit offensive if that is what you are saying, that is what a woman is. No, a woman can walk around in jogging pants and an oversized t-shirt. If it's really about you feeling this body dysmorphia, and you want to become a woman, women are very, again, they're not monolithic. Women are not monolithic. Not every woman, even not every heterosexual woman, wants to be dressed up like Barbie all the time and wear makeup all the time and have long nails all the time and have her boobs out all the time. That is not the way women are or want to be for the most part. I don't know. So I don't know. What I'm trying to say is I've kind of gotten away from the show. Overall, really enjoyed the show, kind of binge watched it. I think they did a lot of things really, really well. I definitely recommend it to watch. But I definitely think just some of the subliminal messaging when it comes to how we should address and think about the trans community in combination with how political this topic has become has really kind of made me go, I'm starting to have very hard stances on certain issues. Yes, 100% I support trans people putting in the work to change from one sex to another. I don't think they should be discriminated against in any way, shape, or form. I think that you should use the pronouns of their choice because I think if you put in the work to become the other sex, then you should be treated like the other sex. But you don't get to have your cake and eat it too. You don't get to have the perks of having had a male adult body and all of the scientific, I'm sorry, this is scientific, you guys. Men's bodies are different from women's bodies. We have larger hearts, we have more muscle mass. You don't get to have the perk of that, then become a woman and then join women's sports. No. So I don't know. Anyway, very long video. Hope you guys stuck around for it. Let me know if you watch Pose, if you like it. I actually really like the character Blanca because I like the fact that she has heart and she's trying to really be there for the community and she's trying to take away a little bit of the bitchiness and backfighting and backstabbing. So I really like that character. And I also really like Angel, who is gorgeous. Oh my God! Now I totally forgot. I don't know if anybody's gonna still be watching this. One more thing. I'm sorry. I hope you guys stick around for this. One more thing. The one thing I still have to say though is, as much as I enjoyed this show, I have to say this will be a failure for the far left. I'm calling it right now. Because one of the things that I've come, and one of the reasons I left the left is because you can never be woke enough. Oh my God. You can never, ever, ever be woke enough for the left. You just can't. Right now, they're going to make Pose be like a breakthrough and like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's about trans people. It's about people of color and all this kind of stuff, which is kind of cool and amazing. But I already know that now we are seeing so much self-identification where it's like you don't have to put in the work anymore to be considered a trans woman. You can keep your beard. You can keep all of the genitalia. You can just be a man and put on some lipstick and you can say, I'm a woman. And the left is running with this narrative. The left is saying, yeah, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Like, you don't have to do any work for it. You can just be whatever you want. You can just call yourself whatever you want. And I'm telling you, it will not be long until people will start attacking this show and saying it's not representative enough. All the trans women on this show are passing. They're all beautiful. They're all skinny. They're gonna call out this show and be like, we don't have to be passing. We don't have. How dare you put a show where everybody is passing, where everybody is beautiful, where everybody has a nice body? There should be ugly, fat trans women with beards that aren't passing, and that should be the way. And like I'm just telling you guys, because that is the way. That is everything that has been created by humanity in terms of art, books, movies, all of it. The left is going through all of it now and just going through and canceling it. No matter if in that time it was very progressive and it was very needed and it was very important, they're now going to go back and look at it through the lens and be like, too many white people, too many straight people, too many beautiful people, too many skinny people, too many passing people. It's just, I'm telling you, it's going to happen with this too. Because the moment I started watching this show, I was like, all of these trans women are way too attractive. They're all way too passing. Somebody's gonna get upset about it. They're gonna call it out. There's not enough dark-skinned black people. There's not enough, there's not enough immigrants that are just new over the board. I'm telling you, it's coming, and yeah. Okay, so anyway, I ranted on for 50 minutes. Hopefully, you guys are all doing well. Would love to hear your comments in terms of if you like Pose, if you've watched it, how do you feel about it, how do you think about my commentary? Do you agree? Do you not agree? What did you like? What didn't you like? Etc. 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 And talk to you guys soon. And I'm sorry, I know I'm looking like that guy. Okay, I'm not looking like the guy. I have the hairdo of the guy from like the Blue Lagoon. I wish I looked like that guy. He had an amazing body. But sorry for playing with my hair a lot, but it's so luxurious these days. All right, take care, you guys. Bye.